Dry fire is super boring, kind of like Kristen Stewart's acting career. But one is more beneficial to you than the other. And my name is Josh. Today we're going to be talking about dry fire and how important it is to utilize it for building proper fundamentals and that good base to do just about anything firearms related. So let's talk about what dry fire is all about. Dry fire is practice in the sense that you don't need to actually live fire anything or have live ammunition or even be at a range. You can be at home and in your pajamas to just do this, type of practice. So what we're trying to do in dry fire is break down those fundamentals to micro movements and to steps that you can easily repeat over and over and over and over again. Because in dry fire, you're going to have to do very repetitive practice. And that's going from drawing the gun, how to find the sights, how to transition between targets, how to pull it out of a bag or a safe. So we're going to go through 5 things that I like to practice for dry fire. Number 1 is you got to get the gun in your hand somehow. So whether it be in a safe at your bedside, in a backpack, inside the waistband holster, outside the waistband holster, we want to know how to get to it and get it out of there in an efficient manner and a very repeatable manner to a point where when something does happen or you need to actually draw the pistol or a rifle out of the bag or anything like that, you're going to know how to do it almost kind of like an instinct, but you're conscious about it. But the process is going to be so much easier. You're going to take those neural pathways and turn it from this into this. A very straight line, very repeatable motion. So what you'll want to do is break it down to very easy steps and then just try to build in between those. So you're going to be like, step number 1, subsection A, B, C, D, E, F, G, step number 2, and etc., etc. So number 1, we're going to work on some drawing from a holster. I'm using an inside the waistband holster, but for the most part, the drawing motion really takes 3 major steps: retrieving the gun, getting both hands on the gun, and presenting it to the target. So with the inside the waistband holster, you can kind of make it maybe a 4-step process. So number 1 is we're going to try to figure out how to get to the gun. We have to defeat a garment since it's inside the waistband holster. So I got to figure out how to get this garment out of the way to a point where when I grab this gun, I'm not going to snag, or I'm not going to miss my shirt or anything like that. Or if you just happen to have injured your thumb and you can't loop under the garment with your thumb, you have to find some way to do that. So what I like to do is just make it kind of like this really gross motor skill and just grab as much shirt as I possibly can and yank the crap out of it, out of the way. So what I want to do is from any hand position, you can try from surrender or down to the sides, is you're going to move both hands at the same speed. So when I come up to grab my garment, I'm already moving my dominant hand to meet the gun in the holster. So I'm going to come up, grab, and I'm going to grab the gun as tight as possible, and I'm going to pull the gun out. Step number 2, you're going to find that spot on the gun that you can meet both hands into the gun. And if you're using a proper grip, what that's going to look like is going to be almost like a karate chop under the trigger guard. So you're going to come up kind of flat-handed here while it's still close to your body. And then number 3 is you're going to start to push the gun out into the target. So from here, that's where you're going to start to roll your grip all together and then present up to the target. Okay, you're going to try to build that straightforward motion, nice straight line, as opposed to coming up as tight as possible and then jutting out. It's a little bit harder to do that than to just come up and straight into the target. Unless you're having to come up and compress ready, that's really the only reason why it should be up here, at least as far as an efficiency standpoint goes. There are a lot of schools of thought on how to draw a gun out of the holster, so we won't get into that, but this is how I do it. So if you break those steps into those 3 major steps, you can kind of work smaller parts into it. So to find your inefficiencies, like how I'm grabbing the gun, am I grabbing too high, too low? That's going to be like subsection A in step number 1. So if I can't get my hand into that gun as tight as possible, I want to make sure I can figure a way how to do that. And I'm going to practice that motion over and over and over again at 10% speed, 20% speed, something nice and slow to where I can build that motion. And then as you get used to it, as you can repeat it 100%, you want to bump it up another 10%, then another 10%. And then you get to a certain point where you can have a specific speed where you're very comfortable with that. When you pull that gun out of the holster, you're going to have a good grip coming out of the holster and a good presentation to the target. And then you have your 100% or 110% where you can just go balls to the wall and see how quick you could do it for the Instagram's sake. But for repeatability, you want to make sure that you push the limit to how fast you can do things, but also know your limits at a specific point that makes it repeatable. So find that, try to break that in practice, and push and push and push, and make it a lot better, a lot smoother, cleaner, whatever you want to say. And the next thing would be reloading. Where's your next mag if you actually carry one? Where is it located? How you're going to get to it quickly with a gun in your hand, and how you kind of interact with both hands at the same time. So what I like to teach is, if you were to reload, you're going to try to move both hands at the same speed, whether it be on the waistband, inside the waistband, or if you're having to reach the bag over to grab a mag out of the bag, or if it's somewhere here in a chest rig, you'll want to bring the gun in and move your hand to the mag at the same time, same speed, same intensity. So if I were to bring the gun into my body while grabbing the mag as efficiently as possible, it'll look something like this. Okay, the gun's already staged to receive the mag, just like that. So at speed, you'll want to make sure that you're paying attention to if you're bringing it in or not, because it's going to make the difference of you grabbing this and trying to find the magazine well, and it might be a little bit too far out to where you're having to like really try. So the closer it is to your body, the more control you have and you're able to see. So I know people tell you don't take your eyes off the threat, but if you practice reloading, it's going to be a lot faster to be able to find that magazine well and get the gun out back onto target without having to F around with trying to find out where it is. So if I were to keep my eyes on the target, I've practiced this, so it might look a little bit easy, but if I were to keep my eyes on the target, I'm having to find that spot and go a little bit slower. So by the time I get the magazine into the gun, you know, who knows what they're going to be doing, but if I can get the magazine into the gun as quickly as possible, it's going to be a lot easier. So just remember, if you're bringing the gun to your body, you're going to try to get to the mag at the same time, so it's going to be the same intensity, same motion. So when you're dry firing, even without the gun, you could kind of ghost it. So you'll go like this, and you bring the gun and your hand at the same time, just like that, or like this, or from the chest rig. As long as you're doing it in one solid motion, it's going to make it a little bit easier for you to break it down and get that mag in there as quickly as possible, because by the time you get the mag out, the gun's ready for you. So you don't have to work in bringing it in and then putting the mag in. Makes it simpler. Number 3 is trying to figure out all the controls on your gun, what they do, and is it important to know how to do it super quick on how to use it. So mostly with rifles, you're going to have a lot of controls to have to manipulate while it's in your shoulder, while holding the gun with one hand, either charging the weapon, putting a mag in, bolt release, and all that stuff. With a pistol, there's not really much going on. So you have your trigger, you have your magazine release, and you have your slide lock. Sometimes you have a safety, sometimes you have a decocker. And in some guns, you have sort of both. Like you have a decocker, but you also have a safety option as well. Like on a Beretta, if you don't go with the G model, if you try to decock your pistol, that lever stays down in a safe mode, so you can't actually operate the double action trigger until you flip it up. So knowing that through dry fire is kind of important, because if you want to decock your pistol and then stick that thing out of the way, so when you pull the gun out, all you have to do is pull the trigger, because I don't know if you know this, but you have to pretty much flip the lever up instead of down, like most like 1911s or something like that. So instead of having to press it down as you're drawing, you're having to kind of do this motion while sticking it up and then bringing your thumb back. So knowing your controls and how they work and how hard they are to utilize, and the fact that you practice how to press that magazine release regardless of what size or how much it sticks out of the gun, it's kind of important to know that type of stuff. So get to know the controls of your gun and how to manipulate them in specific situations. So if you're working with a rifle, how to get the magazine into the mag well, but also what if you're at bolt lock, or also with a pistol, if you're at slide lock, how to get the magazine in and then rack the slide forward, or drop the slide using the slide lock, stuff like that. You want to know how to do all those skills for any type of situation, so figure them out. Number 4, we're going to work on transitions. I think that's super important, because you never know when you're going to have to get on target in a certain position where, let's say I pull the gun out and I've engaged this target, and now a new threat has come into play, or I draw the gun out that happens to not be a threat. Now I have to transition into a new target. So easiest way to break it down is you want to be able to get your eyes on the next target. So if I'm aiming at this target and I want to aim at that target next, what I want to try to avoid is turning into this kind of like pivot with the gun still in my sights and then trying to get onto the next target. It makes it a little bit harder for you to stop at a certain point. So what I want to try to do is get on target to a specific spot. So I'm going to identify that by moving my head, my eyes onto that specific spot and then superimposing the gun right on top of it. That makes it a lot easier to get on that smaller target. So it's almost like the thing, aim small, miss small. But if you can't see that small point that you want to stop at, you're always going to blow past the target and you're going to have to come back. Or you're going to stop a little bit short, or you're going to be a little bit too high, a little bit too low. So being able to identify that target and then bringing it into that target makes it a lot easier to stop on that dime. This will also help you identify what's going on with your grip, transitioning into specific things, moving the gun to different positions. How is your grip or your arm balance and everything like that affecting your sights? And it's kind of a little bit harder with a red dot. So if you're running red dots, you definitely want to practice transitions and getting to different positions, trying to shoot in different ways. And that comes to number 5. We're going to work on different shooting positions, under things, over things, on the side of things, out of like a corner cover or something like that. Because if you've never practiced that, from here, if you try to go around something, your body position, your eye position, the gun position changes. You kind of have to know how that works. So if you can get into that position and still maintain good proper sights, or if you're hauling ass into a cover and then you're coming up to trying to go around that cover, it's going to be really hard for you to pick up that dot, or even the iron sights for that matter, in a more efficient manner. So practicing that, your grip tension, your grip placement, how you're bringing the gun up to find those sights into those particular positions is kind of important. So that's another thing, a little note for you is that when you're dry firing, just because you're not shooting doesn't mean you shouldn't be working on your grip. When you're doing anything, you want to mimic what you're actually doing in live fire, because if you practice all this nonsense, then you go onto the range and then you start shooting and your grip is all kinds of which ways and it's making the gun flop all over the place, then you're going to start to hyper focus on what's going on with that. And then all those skills that you practice in dry fire are going to be kind of forgotten. So when you're practicing dry fire anything, mimic the amount of grip you're actually going to put on the gun, and don't disregard it just because you want to get that specific motion. You want to build those motions with the same exact grip that you would if you were actually shooting the pistol or shooting the rifle. So those are 5 things to work on. Super simple. You can do it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour to 3 hours a day. I recommend doing it at least 5 to 10 minutes a day, picking up the gun and practicing something so you can get more familiar with how the gun works. If you're a new gun owner especially, take some classes, learn what to practice, go home and don't just stick your gun into the safe or never do anything with it. Especially some people that have owned guns for a long time but never even bother to practice. You're doing yourself a disservice. So like I said, dry fire is simple, it's boring, you're gonna have to push yourself to do it. It's really hard to get motivated some days when you just wanna come home, plop on the couch and watch something or drink a beer or eat dinner or anything like that. Try to find that 5 to 10 minutes out of the day before you go to bed. Just take the gun out and practice something, practice your grip tension, your sight positions and stuff like that. So that way it keeps everything fresh, but also gives you a leg up. So when you go to the range, you're not having to deal with all that nonsense. You're not having to figure all that out in the sun or in the cold or in the rain, or just when you just want to have fun. You want to be able to build those fundamentals so you can focus on learning other things that require live fire. So in a nutshell, push yourself and practice. Go home, find some time, do something with the gun. Make sure it's safe, find a good safe spot. Make sure you're following the 4 cardinal rules of firearms safety. Don't point it in a wall that you know that's your kitchen or anything like that in the next room. Try to find a place that if you have somehow forgotten to unload the gun before you dry fire, that if you shoot that wall, it's not going to be as scary as if you just shot into the living room. So make sure you find a good spot to dry fire. Make sure the gun is completely empty. double check, triple check, quadruple check, get the mags and the ammo out of the room, get it out of the way, make sure you don't mix up your unloaded mags with your loaded mags, but just make sure that you're following those safety rules. And overall, try to learn something that you haven't learned already and work on it that way. Dry fire is going to help you build that way of practice, and that it's going to make you a better practicer, if that makes sense. So with all that said, it's time to go. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video if you actually like the video. And follow us on Instagram, Facebook, do all those crazy things. Leave comments down below if you want to know more about dry fire, anything specific that you want to see. You know, we can drop a video on Instagram showing you how it works and everything like that. And we'll see you next time.